Hi, it's Mary Daisy back at Le Chateau de Chêne, the home of Petite Treasure Rescue and Sanctuary. I'm continuing my blog, which is documenting the progression of autoimmune diseases that I've been diagnosed with over approximately 50 years. I sort of did all my previous vlogs to lay down a sort of outline of what stressor was occurring at each of these diagnoses, because I truly believe that stress is such a major contributor to autoimmune disease. So I'm going all the way back to the beginning, and several times in my past vlogs I've made comments of some things that maybe didn't seem relevant, or but I would say this will make more sense later. And so going back to fibromyalgia, I started out with psoriasis, seborrhea, whatever, itchy scalp from stress, from growing up in a household with my adoptive parents. And the funny thing about this is, once I was out of there and I got married at 21, this all went away. However, every time my mother called or I went to visit her, for the rest of my life, my scalp would start itching again, immediately. So I think that's a pretty good indication of how much stress affects all of us. But there's other things that didn't make sense at the time. I also made the comment that when I got married, I married a man from a big Italian family, and I had always wanted a family. But after we got married, the yelling and kind of, it was just too much for me. And that probably doesn't make much sense to a lot of people, because my husband would say, "We're just talking, we're not yelling." And at the time, I didn't find this out till years later, past when I was divorced and everything, that is something that fibromyalgia patients have an issue with. Loud. It started bothering me more when I had remarried, and my second husband and I were in a poker league, and we used to play poker at a bar, and they would crank the music up so loud I'd have to leave. I said, I feel like every nerve in my body is being scratched like nails on a chalkboard. I can't handle it. I don't understand. I said, I just can't. And then when you read years later that this is something that is also attributed to fibromyalgia, there's just so many things that make sense that didn't make sense before. So I came across an article about fibromyalgia that I wanted to share. And it says that the aspect of fibromyalgia, and I think and chronic fatigue, and I think it may also include people who identify like I do as empaths, where we can walk in a room, negative energy, we can feel it. We can meet somebody. We can literally feel it, like we have to get away immediately. And it says, our bodies are overly sensitive to pretty much everything. And it's also emotional and psychological. Medically speaking, when you talk about allergies, immune system malfunction, people are usually diagnosed with a sensitivity to a certain thing. But you can absolutely see, like when you're talking about something like noise, to the degree that you literally have to leave, you can't tolerate noise, is impacting your physical body and causing such mental stress. You need to get out of there. It involves the central nervous system, and my disease at this point is autonomic nervous system, but I believe they all tie together. When you have one and then subsequently you get diagnosed with one after the other, it's because all of these things are accumulating. Like I said, when you get one diagnosis, it doesn't make the symptoms of the previous diagnosis go away. It just adds to it. So the longer you live and the more diagnoses you have, the more your body is feeling it, and your mind and your emotions are dealing with it, or doing their best to deal with it. But unfortunately, that's the problem. When you're so sensitive emotionally and psychologically and intuitively, the more that's added on, the worse it becomes. So, going into the nervous systems, and this is all in relationship to just fibromyalgia. It means lights are too bright, noise. Some people, they can't stand the smell of things, visual issues, hot, cold issues, pressure on skin, it just impacts so much more than what people understand. But to get further into this, you need to research the MTHFR gene. And this is a gene, and a lot of people with fibromyalgia have been diagnosed with it. And I'm not going to try to tell you what it stands for because I just couldn't possibly pronounce it. But it's genetic, and it makes so much more sense if you're tested and you have something like this, why everything is occurring. So very few doctors know anything about MTHFR. However, I know somebody who was living in another area of the country who had been ill for years, had a number of issues, and went to the doctor in her late 30s in another part of the country and found somebody who recognized a number of issues and had her tested. And it turns out she had 4 mutations of this MTHFR. One of the things is gluten sensitivity. Somebody with fibromyalgia will have celiac disease, and the gluten sensitivity in fibromyalgia patients is almost 7 times higher than the rest of the population. Stress. The stress adds to the fibromyalgia. However, environmental, which MTHFR, having this mutation has a lot to do with environmental toxins that a person with MTHFR can't get rid of these toxins. Personally, I am very sensitive to smells. I cannot stand the smell of a bus. The exhaust it gives off will make me nauseous. We had our floors refinished one year in our dining room. I had come home from my job in Chicago, walked in the house to just let the dogs out, and it was so toxic I wouldn't go back in the house. I stayed outside with them on the deck. However, the odor or whatever, the essence of this treatment they had put on the floors was still coming out the door. And then I had to go back and pick up my husband at the train station. And I started with a headache that was so severe, I started throwing up. And when I got to the train station, I told my husband he couldn't take me back to the house. He had to take me to a hotel. I couldn't even walk back in. And I probably should have gone to the hospital. It was that bad. But then I had another similar incident just from putting something like preen around flowers, but it was not that specific product. It was a product that I had gotten for weed control that was supposed to be more natural. However, whatever it had in it, I started with the headache and the nausea, and pretty soon I was lying down just moaning. I couldn't even go near this stuff. So all of these things add up with symptoms of fibromyalgia, adrenal gland fatigue, magnesium deficiency, increased intestinal permeability, which they call leaky gut syndrome. And if you take ibuprofen because your joints hurt so bad from the fibromyalgia, that can cause leaky gut. A lot of food allergies, sensitivities to salicylates, not just gluten. And salicylates are found in everything. Aspirin, apples. And then you have nutritional deficiencies because there are MTHFR mutations that inhibit your body from processing vitamin B vitamins. And with leaky gut on top of that, you have nutrient deficiencies. So you could have a person that looks very overweight and they're nutritionally deficient because their body's not absorbing anything that they put in their mouth in the way of vitamins and minerals. And then you get the bowel issues. The digestion goes into the bowel. You'll either have diarrhea or constipation or chronic both. There's just a cascade, and it causes the stress hormone production, nutrient depletion, and inflammation. And these genes have a hard time turning on and off. And eventually, it could increase your likelihood for heart disease, which I'm now at a 40% higher risk than a normal person for a heart attack. It could lead to diabetes, which thankfully I have not been diagnosed with. That's one of the very few things. And it could happen because with the autonomic-nervous-system-disorder that I'm now at, with these nerves that control digestion, swallowing, temperature, sweating. Like, I'll be sitting watching TV and all of a sudden I'll say to my husband, "Oh my God, I am having the worst hot flash ever." Well, it's just that my brain and my nervous system aren't connecting, and my body's just doing really weird things. Blood pressure is another problem with ANS. Years ago, my husband and I used to go to the gym together, and we'd be on stair steppers next to each other. And, you know, I'm just trucking along, and he's doing maybe twice as fast as me. And mine says, like, way, way high, like in the 90s, and his is way low. And I maybe have just gotten on, and I would stay at that for like the half hour or whatever time. And one day I mentioned it to him. I said, "Why does mine always say, you know, this level?" And he says, "Well, obviously yours is broken, because if it was that level, you'd be dead." So I said, "No," I said, "I use all the bikes. It's always said this." And he said, "Switch with me." There it went, right up. Shortly after that, I needed a surgery on my hand. And before you get surgery, they put you through a bunch of blood work and an EKG and everything else. And I want to say the day before surgery, they called me up and said that it was canceled because my EKG came back having a heart attack. So I had to go through all these tests. And when they finished, it was just that this is an anomaly. This is what they came up with, an anomaly with me. Well, 10 years later or so, like when I was going back to get the Medtronic's devices removed, I had the same experience. And I had to go to another cardiologist, and he cleared me with just an echocardiogram. I didn't have to go through the battery of tests that I had gone through before, but I wasn't diagnosed with the ANA yet. And if I had had that diagnosis, I would have been able to tell him that it's attributed to ANA. So I think I gave you enough to think about. Again, I encourage everybody to sign up for the Smart Patient. Read all of the descriptions of the things they list and pick out as many as you want of the symptoms that you feel. And then join as many forums that you can for each of those diseases, and you will get answers that you're not getting from your doctors. You will get results from the tests that they wouldn't even have ordered had you not insisted. And if you do have an issue with the doctor just telling you it's all in your head, find another doctor. Find somebody who will listen, because this is something a lot of us with autoimmune diseases have run into for years. I found it inconceivable when a doctor this year that I was referred to told me that there was no such thing as fibromyalgia. And I'm thinking, in this day and age, I couldn't believe it. And maybe at some point in the future, they'll say, there is no fibromyalgia, there is no chronic fatigue. Maybe they'll come back and say, there's MTHFR mutations. And it'll be a whole new ball game. So I'm going to continue with a bit more in my next vlog. I hope you have a great day, and I hope you notice that I'm doing this very early in the morning instead of at night. So I want to make sure that I have something to post every day, because I read where a few of you were concerned because I had not posted for a couple days. And again, most people with chronic autoimmune diseases have such good intentions and really think you can do something, but the autoimmune issues get in the way and you're just too tired or in too much pain. So that's all for now, and I look forward to our next session, and I hope you do too. Thank you. Bye-bye.